Okay, quick disclaimer about this video that you're about to watch. I am an atheist. If you are a theist or a deist or you believe something different, that is absolutely fine. I really don't care about your religious beliefs or what you believe. I'm not trying to necessarily be purposefully offensive, but I'm going to answer these questions from my perspective and my point of view. And if you don't like my opinion, that's fine. Just leave a comment about it and move on. Thank you. 10 questions for atheists. Here we go. How did you become an atheist? Now, I made an entire video about this where I ranted on and on and on and kind of rambled for a while, but basically what happened was I was very devoutly Christian. I believed in the Abrahamic faiths and everything, and then I went to this Christian boarding school where I was abused basically under the guise of it's what's in the Bible, it's right, it's correct, it's religion. And so after that I decided to become an atheist because it was very freeing. And when somebody calls me a manipulative, heathenistic blasphemer or whatever, that really doesn't mean anything because, none of that shit's actually real. Alright, let's see. So, number 2, what happens when we die? Well, because our brains are who we are, and because our nervous systems are who we are, when we die, nothing happens. Okay, basically and this is what's very hard, even for me, to understand. What happens when we die? Well, we die. Poof, that's it. There's nothing else. Now the process of dying may actually be incredibly involved. I've heard some certain things about there being chemicals like dimethyltryptamine, DMT, that's actually released by your brain, and supposedly it's really, really trippy, which is where the whole near-death experience comes from. But basically, once your brain dies and shuts down, your consciousness blinks out of existence. Kind of depressing, but it's the reality of what goes on. It's the evidence we have. So. What if you're wrong and there is a heaven? I don't know. I guess I would feel stupid, maybe. I don't know. I can't imagine what that would look like. What does it mean by heaven? Basically, in the contemporary Christian idea of what heaven is, it's basically just where you go to this place where you are with God and all you do is bask in His glory all day, which doesn't really sound very heaven-like to me, but maybe that's heaven for some people. I don't know. Without God, where do you get morality from? Such a thing as secular-based moral philosophy. Read Beyond Good and Evil by Friedrich Wilhelm Nietzsche. Read Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and probably Way of the Superior Man by David Data, which I'm going to do a whole book review on that one because that book is amazing. Question number 5. If there is no God, can we do what we want? Are we free to murder and rape while good deeds are unrewarded? There is no God, can we do what we want? Are we free to rape and murder? Well, there is this thing called, or at least where I am in North Carolina in the United States, we do have a government, we have a police department, and murder and rape are illegal. So, can we do what we want? You could do that, but should you is the real question. I would say you really can't. And again, secular-based moral philosophy, causing wanton harm to other people, unnecessary harm to other people, that's what we consider bad. But again, that's a judgment. Are we free to murder and rape while good deeds are unrewarded? Okay, well, good deeds, and this is something, we'll touch on this real fast. Good deeds, the reward for doing a good deed is the good deed itself. If you're doing good deeds and you're trying to get things in return for that, that's called greed. It's one of the things that I have seen, well, it's happened in my family, but I also, people will tend to do this if you watch for long enough. Somebody might do something nice and they're like, they didn't even thank me for it. They didn't even give me a thank you. And it's like, well, why are you trying to do nice things for people and then get in return? It's not about getting in return. It's about giving, and then you feel good because you give. So it says good deeds are unrewarded. Doing the good deed is the reward in itself. Okay? So, 6. If there is no God, how does your life have any meaning? Well, outside of what I assign to it, it doesn't. Other than that, it has no meaning. And I'm okay with that. And that's good. For me, like I say, that's freeing, because then I can assign whatever meaning I want to it. If my meaning is to stand here and yak at this camera and try and drum up support on YouTube, then that's my meaning. That's what I do. That's me. All right? It's not all about, serving a god or whatever. Where did the universe come from? I don't know. And that's okay. I'm okay with not knowing. It's okay not to have all the answers. At a certain point, you just have to accept. There isn't, if you don't have all the answers to all the big questions, that's okay. You don't have to. But here's what I will postulate. Here's what I will assert. I believe that it is much more likely that the universe started as a result of just an energetic event that was the Big Bang, as opposed to there was this man who was sitting in the void who spoke into the void, and then that made everything. Which one is more likely? Use Occam's razor to evaluate the situation. Question number 8. What about miracles? What all the people who claim to have a connection... I think what they meant is, what about all the people who claim to have a connection with Jesus? What about those who claim to have seen saints or angels? Well, an argument for miracles isn't an argument. Miracles aren't good evidence. Because, think about it like this. What about all the people who have claimed to see UFOs, thereby claim that that is evidence for extraterrestrial life, aliens visiting us? Just because one person saw something and there was a miracle doesn't qualify as experimental, empiric. It is not really very good data. Not that it's not. Personal experience, I think, is important, but only over long periods of time. Like, personal experience, I know that if I go out and run every day, I'm going to be in really good shape. That's there. We can experiment on that. We can experiment on that. That is experimentally. There is data that we have that can show that that is the case. But when it comes to things like, like I was abducted by aliens. Well, that's not really, very good evidence. What about all those people who claim to have a connection with Jesus? Well, there are a lot of people who claim really wild, wacky, ridiculous shit. There are lots of people who have claimed to see UFOs, who have claimed to see ghosts, who have claimed to see all types of stuff. It's not an experimentation that can show that Jesus actually exists, right? I mean, I can make up an imaginary friend and have a close connection with that imaginary friend. And in fact, when I was a kid, I used to do that all the time. Number 9, what is your view of Dawkins, Hitchens, and Harris? I don't know much about these guys. I understand they have done amazing work and written amazing books. I should probably go read those. I don't know much about these guys. Most of where I get my atheistic worldview is from my own mentors and counselors who are atheists. They have, of course, read lots of Dawkins and Hitchens and Stephen Hawking and things like that. Number 10, if there is no God, then why does every society have a religion? Okay, this might be my longest answer because it's pretty philosophically deep. It's a deep question. My conjecture about this, and I think there are some people who might very well argue with me. Why does every society have a religion? Well, I think it's because, and if you look at like most gods, particularly the Abrahamic gods, but there's a lot of gods who are men who are like patriarchal figures, like older males, like a bearded man in the sky or something. Basically a fatherly figure. I would, again, assert that my belief is that people invent stories of gods as patriarchal figures to feel like they have a fatherly figure, right? And to sort of imagine a fatherly figure into existence. Like I said with the whole imaginary friend thing, it's like an imaginary parent type thing. One of the things, and I don't want to say this is not true of everybody, but it's a pretty common theme the world over to have daddy issues. So, and mommy issues too, but daddy issues particularly. dad wasn't there, and so, you come up with an idea of God or whatever. So you don't feel so lonely. So you don't feel so isolated. And then, of course, there's other arguments that can be made. That would be one of my arguments because I think it's interesting. But one of the other arguments that can be made is that, and probably one that has more basis in evidence, is that because we didn't have, back in the day, 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, there really wasn't a very solid scientific basis of understanding. There wasn't a whole lot of experimental data that showed why things were the way they were, why, there were earthquakes. And so there's stories of gods that come up and spring up around these things that explain why things are the way they are. All right, and that was question number 10. So anyway,